Hello everyone, welcome to our group presentation. The topic for our group presentation is pruning techniques in multiplayer games. My name is Vaibhav Vingde and the other group members of my team includes Meenu Devi, Ravi Chaudhary and Aman Yadav. Let us look at the introduction of the topic. Much work and attention has been focused on two-player games and alpha-beta minimax search. This is a fundamental technique used by the computers to play at a championship level in games such as chess and checkers. Alpha-beta pruning works particularly well on games of two players or games with two teams, such as bridge. Much less work has been focused on games with three or more teams or players, such as hearts. In Maxen, the extension of Minimax to multiplayer games, pruning is not that successful. So basically, we are going to see the pruning techniques in multiplayer games, and we will also address the challenges posed by the complex game trees. Challenges in multiplayer games. So what happens in two-player games is that one player's game is another player's loss. So here the pruning is a little easier comparatively. In multiplayer games, we have individual objectives and these objectives vary. So here the pruning is harder and trickier. The reason is that the increase in branching factor. The evaluation function must consider multiple dimensions here. So the pruning becomes harder. We have to see different techniques, pruning techniques for multiplayer settings, which we will see in the slides further. There are different types of examples for multiplayer games, and these games are trick-based card games where player follows suit and highest card wins. One of such example of this game is Hearts, and Hearts is usually played between four players. The goal here is to take as few points as possible. Basically, the player with the minimum score here wins. So this is the problem of the minimization. Another example of this game would be Sergeant Major, and usually this game is played between three players. The goal here is to take as many tricks as possible. Basically, the player with the maximum score here wins, and this is the problem of the maximization. Duality of maximization and minimization. Most of the games can be formulated in terms of maximization and minimization, so it is very important to define some of the terms. Min-P stands for minimum possible score for a player, Max-P, maximum possible score for a player, Min-Sum, minimum sum of all player scores, Max-Sum, maximum sum of all player score. Let us see this in example. Minimization. In minimization, this is the game of hearts. So here the minimum possible score for a player, it is denoted by min-P. It is 0 here. Maximum possible score for a player is denoted by max-P. It is 26 here. Similarly, for the sergeant major in maximization, min-P is denoted by 0, max-P is denoted by 16. Max entries. These trees are very important because we are going to use these trees for our analysis in multiplayer adversarial games. A Maxent tree is a game tree used in multiplayer adversarial games, extending the mini-max algorithm for two-player games to the games with more than two players. Instead of alternating between maximizing and minimizing player, as we have seen in Minimax, we have not seen in Minimax, but we usually do this in Minimax. Each node in a Maxent tree is associated with the vectors of scores, each for one player, and each player maximizes their own score. Now, how does this trees work? To understand the working of the Maxent trees, we will look at a diagram. The diagram which you see here is the diagram of a Maxent tree. The nodes 1, 2, 3. Here the nodes 1, 2, 3 represent players, and the tuple which you see above them 7, 3, 0 are the individual scores of the players. 7 represents the score of the player 1, 3 represents the score of player 2, 0 represents the score of player 3. These tuples which you see on the leaves of this tree can be considered as the maximum scores of the players. So 7 here represents the maximum score of player 1, 3 maximum score of player 2, similarly 0 as the maximum score of player 3. So if you see the node A, which is represented here by A, the goal here is to maximize the score of second player. So for this we will check its children. Here 7, 3, 0, the score of the player second is 3 and the score for the player second in the other leaves is 2. In order to maximize the score of the player 2 in the A node, we will choose 7, 3, 0 as 7 as 3 is greater than 2. Similarly, if we want to maximize the score of the first player, and we will do this in the node 1, We will check 7, 3, 0, 0, 10, 0, 1, 4, 5. So here, since we have to maximize the score of the player 1, we will look at 7, 0, and 1. So 7 is the maximum score, and hence 7, 3, 0 tuple will be chosen. Now, pruning in max trees. So there are different types of training, different types of techniques which we use for pruning in max trees. Some of them are immediate pruning, shallow pruning, and deep pruning. Detailed explanation of these techniques will be given in the further slides. Currently, we will just see the overview of these techniques. So in immediate pruning, when a player, this immediate pruning occurs when a player reaches a guaranteed maximum score. Shallow pruning removes branches based on the known score bounds. Deep pruning is more limited because of the multiplayer dependencies. There is another technique called as reduction of an n-player game to a two-player game, but it is not used much because here we do a lot of assumption. Understand this that the techniques mentioned above have certain kinds of drawbacks, and to overcome this, there is another technique which is called alpha beta branch and round, which we will see in the further explanations. So this is all from my side, and the detailed explanation of this techniques will be given by my team member Minu.
Hello everyone, my name is Minu. So today let's discuss pruning in detail. Let's start with immediate pruning. In multiplayer games, the best possible score is defined differently. Instead of plus infinity and minus infinity, we introduce max p, which is the highest achievable score for any player. When a player reaches a score of max p, it means this is the best possible score for them in the game. At this point, further exploration of that branch is unnecessary as no better outcome can be achieved. The algorithm prunes the remaining branches, preventing unnecessary computations. Example of immediate pruning. See, here in this figure, the game tree consists of 3 players making sequential moves. Here, the root node 730 represents the initial state of the game with player 1 making the first move. And here in this figure there are two terms. First one is max sum and second one is max p. Max sum is the total possible highest score sum across all the players, that is 10. Max p is the max possible score for an individual player, that is 10. And here you can see that at node B the player 2 achieves the score that 10. And since we know that max p is 10, so player 2 has already achieved their best possible outcome. Thus, further no exploration of this branch is necessary. So we can prune the remaining children of this node. Next one is shallow pruning. Shallow pruning is a game tree search optimization technique that reduces computational complexity by eliminating unlikely optimal branches, particularly in multiplayer games where decision making is more complex than in two-player zero-sum games. Unlike alpha-beta pruning, which works efficiently in two-player zero-sum games, shallow pruning is necessary in multiplayer settings due to the following reasons. Scores are not strictly bounded. One player's gain is not necessarily another's loss. And second one is player interactions are non-zero sum. This makes it harder to apply strict pruning rules. Shallow pruning utilizes upper and lower score bounds instead of a strict zero-sum assumption. It selectively removes branches that cannot lead to better outcomes. Example of shallow pruning. Player 1 evaluates node A and finds they can secure at least 6 points. When player 2 examines the first child of node B, they find player 2 can achieve a score of 5. Because the total score is bounded by the max sum, that is 10, this means the player 1 at node B is at most 5. Player 1 already has guaranteed that it has at least 6 points at node A. But at node B, player 1 get at most 5 points, and because 5 is less than 6, the player 1 will never chooses node B. Thus remaining children of node B are pruned. This is called shallow pruning because the pruning decision at B is based on a bound obtained from its parent node. Next one is general bounds for shallow max pruning. Shallow pruning in a maxent tree avoids unnecessary searches by eliminating branches that cannot improve the current best score. If player 1 gets score X at node A and the player 2 gets score Y at node C, then player 1 score at node B is bounded by the max sum minus y. If max sum minus y, which is less than is equals to x, then player 1 will never chooses node B, which allow us to prune all its children and which helps in optimizing the search. In general, if we are taking the n player games, thus the score follows that rule that max p which is less than equal to max sum and which in turn which is less than equal to n dot max p, where max p is nothing but the highest possible score for a player. Now lemma. To shallow prune in a max tree, we have to show that max sum is less than 2 into max p. We know that from the previous slide that x is greater than equal to max sum minus y, and from the definition we also know that 2 into max p is greater than equal to x plus y. From this we come to know that x plus y is greater than equal to max sum, and substituting this inequality we get this, and at last we conclude that 2 max p is greater than equal to max sum. However, if max sum is equal to 2 into max p, pruning is only possible when both x and y is equals to max p. But if y is equals to max p, we can also immediately prune it. Because of this, we tighten the bound to exclude this case, ensures the lemma holds. Next one is deep pruning. See, in this figure, at the root node A, the player 1 is guaranteed a score of at least 6. Player 1 considers a path that provides at least a score of 6. At the node C, you can see that player 1 has a score bound that is less than is equals to 5. This suggested that the player 1 may not achieve greater than equal to 6 if C is chosen. This led idea of pruning the node D. This would be deep pruning. Two possible values of D's are given, 226 or 046. 226 leads to the max value 730 for the tree, and 046 leads to max value 631 for the tree. Because these values still influence the final choice, node D cannot be pruned. Thus, deep pruning occurs when a node is pruned based on information from its grandparent node or beyond. This is different from immediate or shallow pruning, where decisions are made based on parent nodes. That's all about deep pruning. Next one is asymptotic results, which will be discussed by one of our group member, Ravi. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ravi Chaudhary, and in continuation with our discussion, now we will see the asymptotic results. It is a way of describing how the number of nodes you need to examine grows as you search deeper in the game tree, and how effective pruning can be reducing that growth. In two-player games, alpha-beta pruning reduces the branching factor to approximately square root of b, and in multiplayer games using max n with shallow pruning, the best case branching factor is reduced to 1 plus square root of 4b minus 3 divided by 2, which is less efficient than the two-player case. In multiplayer games, even under shallow pruning, the average case asymptotic branching factor remains close to b, meaning pruning is less effective overall. Now we will discuss some more efficient pruning techniques like reduction to a paranoid two-player game. It is another method to increase pruning in multiplayer games is to reduce the game to a two-player game. And this allows better pruning but can lead to unrealistic decision also. Multiplayer games can be simplified into two-player games by assuming all opponents work together against you. And the assumption of opponents forming a coalition may not always reflect actual gameplay strategies. And the structure of reinterpreted game tree is a maximizing player moves at the root node with branching factor b, and enemy coalition play against with an effective branching factor b to the power n minus 1. Now we will discuss reduction to a paranoid two-player game with a tree diagram. The diagram illustrates the reduction to a two paranoid two-player game for multiplayer games. Here the multiplayer games tree is simplified by assuming that all opponents form a coalition against the current player. The root node represents the current player's move with a branching factor of p, and the next level represents the combined coalition of opponent with a branching factor of b to the power n minus 1, where n is the total number of players. The alternation continues as shown in the diagram, creating a structure similar to a two-player game tree. By treating all opponents as one adversarial player, alpha beta pruning can be applied, reducing the search space significantly. However, this paranoid assumption may lead to a suboptimal strategies because it overestimates cooperation among opponents. This reduction allows deeper search but sacrifices accuracy in modeling realistic opponents' behavior. Now we will discuss about some more efficient pruning techniques, depth first, branch and bound pruning. This pruning techniques requires a monotonic heuristic which is naturally present in many card games. And key concept includes that once a or point is secured, it cannot be lost. An evaluation function provides bound on score for pruning. There are some notation that we will use in the depth first, branch and bound pruning. And the process is that at each node heuristic estimates bounds, and if cost along a path exceeds achievable cost, that branch is pruned. Introduce concepts similar to alpha beta pruning. Immediate pruning stops when the best possible outcome is found, and shallow pruning uses bounds from parents, and the deep pruning attempts to prune based on bounds from higher level. Now we will discuss about single agent branch and bound example. The branch and bound algorithm is commonly used in a depth first search to prune single agent minimization search trees such as the traveling salesman problem. And the key points includes we aim to find the shortest path to a leaf from the root where edges have positive costs. Since all paths have positive lengths, the cost along a path monotonically increases, providing a lower bound on the cost to a leaf. If unexplored path through a node exceeds the best path found so far, its descendants are pruned. Now we will discuss about single agent branch and bound pruning with an example. In this figure, the heuristic at node A says the best score we can get is 2. Since we have a path of total cost 2 through the first child, we can prune the remaining children as we have found the best possible path. After finding the path with cost 2, we use that cost as a bound while searching subsequent children. At node B, our heuristic tells us that all paths through B have the cost higher than the bound of 2. So all children of B are pruned. This is like a shallow pruning since the bound comes from the parent of B. Finally, at node C, we can prune based on the bound of 2 on the path cost from the grandparent of C, which is like deep pruning. That's all from my side. Now, our teammate Aman will discuss some more pruning techniques. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aman Yadav. My roll number is 2411MC06. As other of my group member have discussed about pruning like shallow pruning, deep pruning, and immediate pruning, I will move with multiplayer branching down. So branching down is used to prune unnecessary nodes in a multiplayer game tree, maximum tree. Unlike min-max with alpha beta pruning, pruning in a maximum tree is more challenging. Branch and bound pruning works similar to deep alpha beta pruning, but it has its own limitation. The maximum value of prune node will never be a maximum value of the tree, but it may still affect it. We will look around this example to understand about the multiplayer branch and bound pruning. Immediate pruning will occur at node A because player 2 can get a score of 9, ensuring no better choice from other children. Shallow pruning will occur at node B as player 1 is guaranteed 7 or more at the root, making all children of node B unnecessary since a better move exists at node A. Deep branch and bound pruning like deep alpha beta pruning can sometimes incorrectly affect the maximum value calculation. At node C, player 1 is guaranteed a point less or equal to 5, leading a potential pruning. However, player 2's action can influence a final maximum value could be either of 790 or 1051, depending on the choice at node C and node D. Alpha beta branch and bound pruning. It consists of two pruning. The first is shallow pruning and second is branch and bound. So in shallow pruning, we compare two players backed up score to prune unnecessary branches. In branch and bound, we use a monotonic heuristics to compare with players' score for more effective pruning. So in total combination, it combines both techniques to ensure pruning efficiency further. We will look around this example to understand alpha beta branch and bound pruning. Solo pruning applies here due to bound on the node's value from its left branch. After evaluating left child of node A, an upper bound of 7 is placed on player 1's score since player 2's is guaranteed at least 3 points. However, this does not lead to pruning as it does not conflict with root partial maximum value. By combining heuristic information, a tighter bound is stabilized. Player 1's real score is at most 5. Additionally, in optimization, occur at, as player 2 will only switch path if getting at least 8 to a maximum of 6. Since player 1 did not get 7 points at left child of A, a solo bound is enough to prune right branch of node A. Experimental result. The results shown below are based on the average number of nodes expanded by each algorithm over 200 different game trees. For example, if it is a full tree, then average node in the tree will be 3.33 billion and reduction factor will be 1. If it's depth first branching down, average node will be 32.7 million and reduction factor will be 102. If it is shallow pruning, then average nodes will be 26.8 million and reduction factor will be 1.22. If it alpha beta branching bound, then average node will be 1.43 million and reduction factor is 18.7. If it is paranoid, then average node will be 4,37,600 and reduction factor will be 3.27. But if it is paranoid with heuristic, then average node will be 36,121 and reduction factor will be of 12.1. So shallow pruning provides significant saving over full tree expansion despite its theoretical limitation, whereas the paranoid pruning is much faster than standard max and backup rule, but its effectiveness in improving decision quality remains uncertain. Conclusion and future work. We refined the bounds needed to prune a maximum tree using shallow pruning and introduced the alpha, beta, and branching bound algorithm. While this algorithm significantly reduces node expansion, it is still less effective than two-player alpha beta pruning. Exploring domain-specific knowledge such as suit following rules in trick-based games to simplify such processes can be used for future works. Expanding search in multiplayer game search is a field of significant growth potential. Thank you.